to our show that is called Real Shame. It's a show where us two guys, watch movies from our movie list of shame. Basically, movies we should have seen, haven't seen, but we're fixing that for you. And then we're yammering on about it for about 20 some odd minutes. I'm Adam.
I'm Andy.
Earlier in the week, we were watching this whole week, we're actually watching movies I've never seen. And earlier in the week, we delve into our first kind of blaxploitation movie, and we watched Shaft. And Andy decided to pair that with another movie, and that movie is...
A drug dealer wants to sell a bunch of coke and then get out of the game completely. But the man has other plans in Superfly.
I'm getting out, Eddie.
Getting out of what?
The cocaine business.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Man, those junkies must have knocked a hole in your head. You gonna give all this up? 8-track stereo, color TV in every room, and can snort a half a piece of dope every day. That's the American dream.
So Shaft was directed by Gordon Parks. Superfly was directed by Gordon Parks Jr., his son. Yeah, his son got into the game. The screenplay was written by Philip Fenty, and Shaft had an iconic music score by Isaac Hayes. Superfly has an iconic music score by Mr. Curtis Mayfield.
Some may say even more iconic.
I say more iconic, personally.
Yeah.
So Ron O'Neal plays Priest. Ron O'Neal never had a huge career. He was in a lot of movies. He passed away, I think, around 2006, but he was in movies all the way up until he died. But the movies that I wrote down kind of that he's in, that at least I was familiar with, that I've seen, are movies like When a Stranger Calls, Red Dawn, the original Red Dawn. And he's in Original Gangsters, which has Pam Grier, Jim Brown, and Fred Williamson, came out in the 1990s. His partner in the movie, so I think I said Ron O'Neal plays Priest.
Is Original Gangsters like... Sorry, I interrupted you.
No.
Is Original Gangsters like the Expendables before the Expendables?
I've never seen it. I honestly don't. I think
You
it's
know what
like
I mean?
Jim
Like
Brown
grabbing like all these...
Yeah, they took,
all these
they
actors
took,
from like a certain genre.
Yeah,
and, like,
no, in that sense,
together.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. They took three kind of blaxploitation stars in those three people and put them in the original gangsters. Yeah, and then Ron O'Neal, who also was in it, although he's not like billed. He's not on the front cover. He's not like billed as one of the leads. And I haven't seen it, so I don't know how big his role is in that film. Ron O'Neal's or Priest's partner in the film, Eddie, is played by a guy named Carl Lee. And I was looking up Carl Lee. His father was a boxer who went by the name Canada Lee. And his father, the boxer, later became an actor and was actually in Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat. I thought that was pretty cool. Carl Lee, who's in this movie, who plays Eddie, was in a long relationship with filmmaker Shirley Clark. She was a documentary filmmaker that was making movies, I think as early as the 1950s, all the way up until like the 80s and beyond. But they were in like a 30-year-long relationship. I wasn't familiar with Shirley Clark until probably the last 5 or 6 years because Milestone Films, which is a Blu-ray and DVD label, they've put a bunch of her work out on Blu-ray and DVD, and she has some cool stuff on there. And then Carl Lee, I mentioned last time on Monday, I mentioned Werewolves on Wheels. Carl Lee's in that. Sheila Fraser plays Georgia. Julius Harris plays Scatter. He would go on to play Teehee in Live and Let Die, the Bond movie.
Yeah.
He's in Shaft's Big Score, actually. He's in another blaxploitation movie called Black Caesar, which has Fred Williamson. He's in Trouble Man. He's in the 1970s King Kong, where Kong climbs the... Come in. Where King Kong climbs the World Trade Center, and he's in Darkman, Sam Raimi's Darkman. Yes. Sig Shore, who was the producer of Superfly, is actually the one who plays the man, Reardon, at the end of the film, but apparently he's billed as Mike Richards. And Curtis Mayfield is also in this movie. There's a special appearance from the Curtis Mayfield Experience. There's one scene where Priest and I think Eddie go to Scatter's club, and Curtis Mayfield, I believe, is performing Superfly when they come in and sit down. So this is a movie that I have seen only one time before. I saw it on VHS back in the 1990s. You've never seen it?
Never seen it.
But I know you've heard of Superfly.
I have.
I know you've heard the term. I know you've heard of the movie.
I have.
And you've probably, if you've listened to any hip-hop at all, have heard some samples from this movie or samples of the dialogue.
And if you haven't, the movie will make sure you've heard the song Superfly at least 4 times, 5 times.
Maybe, yeah. All right. So let's not dog on the soundtrack just yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you think about Superfly?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is still kind of. I hate to rinse and repeat my review for Shaft, but I kind of again I feel like this movie is definitely it feels a lot slower than Shaft, and we're in Superfly's car a lot, and he's driving around a lot, and it's just like sometimes it feels like it's real time.
It's an awesome car though.
It's an awesome car. I'm not gonna lie.
Cadillac Eldorado.
But it just feels like okay, we're kind of in the car a lot. So the stuff if you haven't watched our Shaft review, what I'll say is like the story, you know, doesn't really pull me in that much. But seeing like the milieu and the seeing New York and seeing because this takes place in New York too, right?
Mm.
Yeah, okay. I said New York, and I'm like, hopefully I got that right. And just seeing that,
I believe so. I'm pretty sure.
yeah. Just seeing all that like rendered on the screen, seeing what it was like in 1972 is really interesting to me, and I find that really captivating. I will say, and I don't know if this is fighting words or not. I think Ron O'Neal is actually more interesting as Superfly than I got for Richard Roundtree as Shaft. Like I just for some reason I connected with his character more. I thought he was more interesting and stuff like that, and I don't know. I mean I haven't figured out the pinpoint what that was, but I thought he was more interesting in this turn. I was more following along.
Okay.
So you know, I guess don't have a whole lot of experience with blaxploitation movies, so I think that's probably that is showing a little bit with this stuff, and you know, kind of understanding the genre a little bit more. But you know, overall, it didn't really like captivate me or anything like that. Even though I thought Ron O'Neal was pretty good and all that kind of stuff, so I would just say slow.
Yeah,
slow
so
like he drives.
I saw this movie back in the 1990s, as I said, on VHS, and I liked it back then.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, even at that time, I'm pretty sure I had heard samples of the dialogue, and I know I had heard samples of Curtis Mayfield's music and some of the hip hop music that I had heard and stuff like that. So I think when I watched it, I was like, oh, I've heard that before. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's whatever. And I enjoyed the movie. Man, what a difference 20 odd years makes. This movie's bad. I don't like this movie really much at all.
Yeah.
Outside of probably what you said, kind of seeing the 1972 city and everything, and seeing the cool car and the outfits that he wears are great. You know, a lot of the clothes that he wears and stuff like that. But man, this movie is painful to sit through. I had a hard time.
Yeah.
I mean, I say I paid attention, but I was like, God, this movie just goes on and on and on, and it's only 90 minutes or so. I did read on the trivia, who knows if the trivia is accurate, that the script was only about 45 pages long, and I believe it because it feels so padded.
Yeah.
Even at 90 minutes, it feels like every single scene just goes on and on and on, and they're saying the same things over and over, maybe in different ways or slower. You know, the dialogue's coming out slower. There's scenes of the driving around. There's real-time things going on that shouldn't be real-time. This movie just takes forever to finally end, and I was glad when it was over. And it pains me to say that because I remember this movie being good, and I'm not discounting the impact that this movie had on popular culture at all, because it had a huge impact, in fact, on popular culture. But I think this movie is a chore to sit through, and it's bad. Like, and the acting, aside from Ron O'Neal and probably Carl Lee, a lot of the acting is really bad. It's just and I know a lot of the people that are in the movie. I know the guy that plays Freddy was an ex-con. In fact, I read that he had recently got out of prison when they brought him into. He'd been in prison, or I think he had different stints in prison. But I read somewhere that cumulatively his time spent in prison was damn near 30 years.
Wow.
So he's definitely, you could tell he's not an actor. And a lot of the acting in this film is just bad. I mean, I can't say that about Shaft. I think most of the acting in Shaft is pretty good. This movie, by comparison, most of the acting to me was pretty bad, aside from Ron O'Neal. And even Ron O'Neal, I feel like a lot of it, I think he probably knew that he was doing scenes with people who couldn't act, so he emotes.
Yeah.
He's like, I got to get out of the game. You know, he's very, over and over. So even that got a little bit tiresome to me, you know, him just being very adamant or whatever. Again, I'm not saying Ron O'Neal's a bad actor, but I think he probably over-emoted.
He's like the police chief and the mayor in January Man.
Yeah. He over-emoted, I think, to kind of make up for the piss-poor acting from some of the people that he was sharing a scene with. So Yeah, unfortunately, aside from the look of the film, the costumes, or not costumes, but the clothes that he wears, because he wears, he's like a highfalutin drug dealer. He's got some awesome clothes.
He's made a lot of money.
He's making a lot of money. He's living large.
I mean, that's what they say at the end, right? The slow motion when
that fight scene is so poorly staged in slow mo. It's just. Oh man, yeah. I feel like we're gonna get some hate mail or something for this, but I'm not discounting the importance of this film as an early blaxploitation film, and again the influence that this film has had on popular culture. But I don't think that makes it a good movie.
Yeah.
I think the movie is tough to sit through. Yes, it was. I mean, I was like, ooh, let's hurry this up. I got other things to do. But yeah, it's like night and day. The first time I saw this movie, I really enjoyed it. Now seeing it, I'm just like, man. And I was thinking, I was like, I really am not enjoying this. I am pretty sure Adam's probably not enjoying it either. So I'm not surprised that you found it to be also very, very painfully slow.
Yeah, for sure.
Painfully slow. So this movie was followed by a sequel the following year, Superfly TNT.
Is that slow?
Let me. I haven't seen that, but I know Leonard Maltin gives Superfly TNT a bomb, and he actually is favorable on this film. I do want to say before I kind of jump into, I've got to get a little ahead of myself. I know this movie had some controversy. It came under some flack because it glorified drug dealing, basically, because nothing bad really happens to the priest character, right? I mean, he ends up getting away with it, but I mean, obviously, I think that's probably a criticism more from that time period. Obviously, now we've seen a lot more movies, I feel like, with people even worse than this. Because I know, yes, I'm not saying his morality is not questionable, because it is. And he is selling, cocaine. I mean, it's admirable that he wants to get out of the game, but it's not admirable that he wants to sell a bunch of cocaine to people that could potentially die from it or have their lives ruined to get out of the game. But this movie did come under a lot of fire from people saying, he should get a comeuppance. Something bad should happen to him. He shouldn't just get away with it, but he does. I just thought I would mention that. I almost forgot to say that, but it did have a little bit of controversy. Anyway, Superfly TNT came out the following year. It was actually directed by Ron O'Neal, so he starred in it as Priest, and it has Sheila Fraser, but she's back as Georgia. But again, I haven't seen it. Leonard Maltin says it's terrible. Ron O'Neal directed. The screenplay is by Alex Haley, which I found was interesting because I didn't know he ever did any movies. Apparently, that's the only screenplay he ever did. Alex Haley is better known as the author of the book Roots, which was turned into a miniseries later in the 1970s. He also did the autobiography of Malcolm X after interviewing Malcolm X for a long, long time. The Return of Superfly came out in 1990. Also never seen that. Also here, that's terrible.
That's a big jump in years.
And a remake came out of Superfly in 2018, which I actually have seen and which is not good. But at least it's not painfully slow like this movie. It moves a bit more.
The remake, do you remember?
I do not remember the guy's name. No. Okay. So Gordon Parks Jr., I mentioned, the son of Gordon Parks. Unfortunately, he did not get to make that many films. I think he made 4 films total, but he died in a plane crash in Kenya in 1979. But he did make a movie called Aaron Loves Angela, which is kind of like a Harlem version of Romeo and Juliet. And he made a movie called Three the Hard Way, which has, I believe, Fred Williamson, Jim Brown, and Jim Kelly, who's like the Kung Fu guy. He's in Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee and some other film like Golden Needles with Joe Don Baker, which recently got a Blu-ray release. So the soundtrack to this movie, Curtis Mayfield soundtrack, I think you found it repetitious. You found it a little bit repetitious.
They played the song Superfly a lot.
I agree with that, but I absolutely love the soundtrack. I know when we did the Glory episode, I said that James Horner's score and that he did with the Boys Choir of Harlem is my favorite soundtrack of all, or favorite score of all time, and I stand by that. But that's like orchestral. I mean, obviously the Boys Choir of Harlem are singing, but it's not like something you would release as a single. If we're talking about soundtracks where you would release songs as singles, which obviously this soundtrack did have singles released from it, Superfly is my absolute favorite soundtrack in that respect. So score, glory, songs, whatever is Curtis Mayfield's Superfly. I love the soundtrack. I've had the CD forever. I think I've had like 2 copies of the CD. I have like a deluxe edition that has all these like outtakes and B-sides and stuff like that. I absolutely love
it. Did it have dialogue from the movie in the CD?
It does not. It has a. It's like a Rhino Records CD. It has an interview, I think, with Curtis Mayfield, but it has a dialogue from it. But I love the soundtrack so much. Freddy's Dead and Superfly were both singles that charted from this soundtrack. And this soundtrack, the movie made money. The soundtrack made tons of money as well. And because of it, Curtis Mayfield was tapped to do some other soundtracks in the 1970s. He did Let's Do It Again with Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby, I think, are both in that. He did, whoop, my phone went off, bing bong. He did Sparkle, which was remade, I think, in 2012, but this 1970s one is songs that he wrote. I think Aretha Franklin performs them. He did a soundtrack for a movie called Claudine, which was recently released by Criterion on Blu-ray with James Earl Jones and Diane Carroll. And he did some music for the return of Superfly, including a song called Superfly 1990 that he did with Ice-T.
Oh, interesting.
And since I'm such a downer and I talked about Gordon Parks Jr. dying in a plane crash, Curtis Mayfield was paralyzed in 1990, the same year that Return of Superfly came out. He was at an outdoor concert and a freak gust of wind blew some lighting equipment on him and crushed him and paralyzed him.
That's so scary.
Yeah. And he lived for another 9 years. I think he died in 1999. He was still able to record music, although it was very difficult for him to do. So I think he put out maybe one more album in that time span before he passed away. But we'll always have Superfly. And I mean, Superfly's not the only good thing he's done. He has some great albums. And before he was solo, he was with the Impressions. They have a lot of great songs. But to me, Superfly is, it's the best soundtrack. I love it. It is Chef's Kiss. So the soundtrack was selected, not the movie, but the soundtrack was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in 2019.
Burn to the movie.
What's that?
Burn to the movie.
Burn to the movie, yeah. I don't think the movie's been selected. And the movie currently, I think we mentioned this with Shaft. The first 3 Shaft movies are all on HBO Max, at least while we're filming this. Hopefully that's true when this episode actually airs. And right now, Superfly is on HBO Max. You can either search for it or you can go, they're all in the TCM hub. They're on HBO Max currently. This movie is 93% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, 70% audience score. So interestingly, this has a higher critic score than Shaft does. And again, I don't know how many critics weighed in on both. Obviously, that factors in, but 93% is way too high for me. And I didn't find a Siskel and Ebert review of this movie, but I know Leonard Maltin gives it 3 out of 4 stars, which is the same thing he gave Shaft. And to me, this movie's not nearly in the same league as Shaft.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
All right. Well, that's everything about Superfly, the Curtis Mayfield experience.
Yeah.
On these Wednesday episodes, we always like to answer viewer questions or movie questions that we have. And we chose one that is akin to the movie that we were doing today. So, like Andy said a little bit earlier, Superfly is about priests trying to get out of the game, trying to sell a lot of coke. He is a coke dealer trying to sell a lot of coke so he can get out of the game. And we figured drugs have been pretty prominent in movies for a long time. Like you said, on Monday, there's been Reefer Madness and all those kind of stuff. So as long as there's been film and drugs, there's been drugs on film, right?
Pretty much.
So we decided, with that long introduction, we decided to pick out maybe some of our favorite movies that feature drugs pretty prominently in the movie, I guess would say.
Let's get this out of the way. Drugs are bad.
Yeah, drugs are bad.
Jenny, eat something.
Drugs are bad, okay?
Yeah, drugs are bad.
What's the one where the PCP where the girl jumps out the window?
That is Desperate Lies with Holly or
the Holly Hunter?
No, Helen Hunt. I was about to say Holly Hunter. Yeah. Helen Hunt. They both got alliterative H names. Yeah, Helen Hunt freaks out and jumps out the window.
So if you haven't seen that clip,
Desperate Lies.
What do you Google to see that clip?
Oh my God, Helen Hunt, Desperate Lives, Helen Hunt freak out. Yeah, it's probably the best thing. Helen Hunt freak out. Yeah, it's hilarious.
I have a kind of a list thing here opened on my thing. I will,
and we should add this encompasses legal and illegal drugs. So alcohol could also be like Lost Weekend is one that's at the top of this list and stuff like that. Days of Wine and Roses is another one with Jack Lemmon and Lee Remick, I believe.
And one I'll call out that I remember really liking when I was younger was Requiem for a Dream. This just got a Blu-ray, a Steelbook
Blu-ray release. Yeah.
And Requiem for a Dream came out right as I was working at the video store. And so I started, my whole world of watching movies started opening up because I had access to all these movies and I started caring more about movies and all that kind of stuff, and have heard about Darren Aronofsky, in his directorial efforts beforehand with Pi and all that kind of stuff. And Requiem for a Dream was a new movie coming out and all that kind of stuff. And that movie is intense and crazy. And I remember the refrigerator coming alive and all that kind of stuff. It's an insane movie, and I haven't seen it since it came out. So it's probably been about 20 years since I've seen it. So I'm curious on how that movie stands up. But I remember it being like, it also being like one of those movies where it's just like, you feel cool because you like it, right? And like not a lot of people know about it. It's like one of those things where it just felt like you're part of the cool kid club or something like that. So I don't know how now, being much older and hopefully more mature, how I feel about that movie.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of those movies that, because I really liked it when I saw it, and that sounds weird because it's a movie that it's hard to say that you like it because it's so harrowing.
You can't say that for a lot of his movies.
Yeah, I think I will say if you are thinking about doing drugs and you watch Requiem for a Dream, that'll probably turn you off, right?
Yeah,
I mean, because it definitely shows the negative aspects big time, especially with what happens.
Have the Marlon Wayans character,
Jared Leto's arm.
Oh, okay, that was Marlon Wayans' arm, but
I think it's Jared Leto's arm. Yeah, it's disgusting, but yeah, it's a very harrowing movie. But I thought it was really, really well done. But yeah, because it's not a movie that you want to pop in on a nightly basis.
Yeah, it's not like
hey, I want to watch Requiem for a Dream. And I haven't seen it since it came out, but I really enjoyed it then.
I'm trying to figure out if Clint Mansell did he did.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, I love Clint Mansell like as a musician and a scorer, like composer, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
He was on a band, I think Pop Would Eat Himself, way back, but he's done a lot of stuff with Clint Mansell's done a lot of stuff with Darren Aronofsky that I love soundtrack wise, like The Fountain and stuff like that. And then he teamed with Duncan Jones and did the Moon soundtrack, which is probably one of my favorite themes and soundtracks. He's amazing, Clint Mansell. So just putting that out there, since you talked about Curtis Mayfield, I like Clint Mansell a whole lot.
Right
on. I can just choose the one that kind of jumps out at me. Obviously, there's a whole bunch that I'm just looking at this list. There's a whole bunch that kind of it's hard to choose, right? Which ones they are. I'm sure there's a bunch that I'm kind of missing, and I remember liking Blow whenever I was growing up and stuff like that. I haven't revisited that in a while. But Go was a very interesting movie for me. Again, came out around the same time when I was getting into movies. It's written by John August. It's directed by Doug Liman, who's a great director, very underrated director.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel.
I agree.
And Go is crazy, like, movie about, drug and drug culture and like ecstasy and all this kind of stuff. And it's funny. It's just wacky. It's out there. And just at that time, it was just so different than everything else that me and my friends have seen and stuff like that. So it was just so weird and so out there. And, it was just so wacky that, I really liked Go a lot. I had I laughed for like 5 minutes at one scene and Go in the theaters, not trying to be mean or anything. It just like hit this chord in me and it just resonated where I just couldn't help but laugh about it. So for me, when I saw Go, reminded myself that Go was one of these movies that jumped to the top of my list. So Go, check it out.
Been a while since I've seen that, but I liked it when I saw it. Just a long time ago was when I saw it. So I was kind of looking through those lists as well, and I will say this as far as like the kind of stoner movies like Pineapple Express. I haven't seen Half Baked.
Yeah,
I think I've seen some Cheech and Chong movies, but
I was gonna say
what I've seen, I never really thought was all that funny.
I was way too young watching Cheech and Chong movies,
like Up in Smoke.
Smoke, yeah. I had a copy of Up in Smoke, and I was not. I don't even think I was old enough to drive.
Yeah,
I had a copy of it. It probably didn't like register with me. Like,
I feel like
marijuana.
Those were the kind of movies that would come on HBO like back in the 80s, and I would see them. Like I'd be over at my friend's house who his parents had HBO because I didn't have HBO, and I'd be over at my friend's house and they would be on, and my friend would just be laughing hysterically, and I'd be like, "This isn't funny." I don't know if I just didn't get it or whatever, but I've never watched that stuff. Yeah, the Corsican Brothers and all that stuff. I've never. I don't think I've seen a Cheech and Chong movie from beginning to end.
Interesting.
So, but I know obviously they're huge pot guys. So I know those movies qualify as drug movies. And then again, I haven't seen Half Baked. I'm not a big Seth Rogen guy, so Pineapple Express is like,
I've seen it. I
that
remember
kinda
it being
stuff.
good.
Yeah, I don't know, but I was going to mention two movies that I don't think you've seen either one, and so I think we'll do them at some point on the show. One is a Gus Van Sant movie that he did, I believe, in 1989 called Drugstore Cowboy with Matt Dillon and Kelly Lynch,
I've heard of
which
that
I've
one.
always really liked. They're kind of it takes place in the 1970s, and they're on the hunt for any kind of drug they can lay their hands on. Basically, it's got Heather Graham in it as well. But I've always really liked that film, but the film that I think is like the best drug related kind of movie is Trainspotting. I love Trainspotting
Which I've never seen.
dearly. That's one of the best films of the 1990s to me. I like the sequel as well. It was nice catching up with those characters after 20 years or whatever, but the original film to me is a movie that I could watch. Weirdly enough, I could watch over and over, and I have watched it over and over. I like that movie a lot.
All right.
Yeah.
I remember is The Beach being a drug movie? I remember
Aren't they growing drugs on the beach?
Yeah,
like
or
some guys
something
are
like
like cultivating drugs or
Yeah.
something, and then they've got like machine guns and they're kind of chasing them. I
Maybe,
think it's got some.
I remember
I believe some
Leonardo
drug stuff
DiCaprio
is in there.
doing weird stuff on the beach after smoking something or something.
He's like in a video game.
Yeah,
He's like running. Yeah, that's a. I've always said kind of like. What was it, Reindeer Games or Payback or whatever that you were talking about? I don't think The Beach is nearly as bad as people think it is. I think The Beach is definitely, and that's another. Speaking of Trainspotting, that's another Danny Boyle movie.
Yeah, that's what made me think of it. Was Danny Boyle.
I think The Beach is underrated, and I do not think it has a Blu-ray release still, at least not in the States. So I think they need to get on that.
Yeah.
If nothing else, I feel like an interesting movie to watch, even if you don't like it.
Danny Boyle's a great director.
He is a great director. He makes some cool movies.
And he's one of those directors, I know we're going tangent, but he's like directed a movie in like every genre.
Yeah.
Darren Aronofsky, who we talked about earlier, is like, he has his kind of movie, right?
Mm.
David Fincher kind of has his type of movie, right? Danny Boyle's done like Jobs, The Beach, Slumdog Millionaire, Trainspotting, 127
Millions
Hours
is another movie that he
Millions.
did, which is cool.
He's Shallow Grave. Did he do Shallow Grave?
He did do Shallow Grave.
Shallow Grave. He's all over the map. He Sunshine. He did. He just directs, from different genres. He's a very good director and very well accomplished.
Yeah, very versatile, and he's one of those guys that if I know there's a Danny Boyle movie coming out, I'm interested.
Yeah,
I'll see it. That's not to say I have seen all of his movies, but I at least am interested in seeing all his movies.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's more Danny Boyle than you thought you were going to get, but your life is better for it. Watch The Beach.
Hopefully.
All right. So that was our favorite movies that feature drugs prominently. I'll probably figure out a better way to say that.
But drugs are bad.
In the description, drugs are bad. I know there's movies we've missed that we just overlooked or something like that. So you got to let us know what your favorite drug movies are. Not your favorite movies you like to watch while on drugs.
or that. I mean, whatever.
That's a different question. So let us know. Maybe there are movies that I haven't seen or Andy hasn't seen. We'll add them to the list and all that kind of stuff. Shoot us an email, realshame@gmail.com. That's where we answer questions like this. If you want your question answered, we can do that for you. Like, subscribe, share the show, do all that social media stuff. We really do appreciate it and really just help spread the word of the show. It makes us look smart, and I don't know if it really does, but hey, it helps.
I don't know if anything makes me look smart.
Yeah, well, you should see some of the comments about me. Okay, let's take off that tangent. All right, stay tuned next week as we watch some movies from Andy's list of shame, and we'll see you soon, guys. Bye.